almost had a child with my sister, and we didn't know until it was too late. I never thought I would write something like this. Even now, putting these words together feels unreal, but I need to tell this story. Not to shock. Not to excuse myself. Just to explain how a truth you never suspected can destroy everything you believed about your life. I met her when we were already adults. We did not grow up together. We did not share a childhood. We had no memories in common. To me, she was just another woman. We met in a completely normal way. Through friends. A casual conversation. A laugh that turned into longer talks. There was nothing strange about it. Nothing that felt wrong. We connected naturally, like two people who happened to meet at the right moment in their lives. I had never been told I had siblings. I grew up believing I was an only child. My father was never present, and my mother avoided talking about her past. I never pushed too hard. Some silences feel permanent, and you learn to live around them. Our relationship moved forward quickly, but not recklessly. We talked a lot. About life, pain, plans, fears. It wasn't superficial. For the first time, I felt like I was building something real. She also had gaps in her family history. Her father had died when she was young. Her mother avoided certain topics. Dates didn't always add up. Stories felt incomplete. But no one imagined something like this. No one even considers it. Then one day she told me something that changed everything. She was pregnant. I still remember her expression. Fear, happiness, disbelief, all mixed together. I didn't speak for a few seconds, and then a feeling I had never experienced before settled in. Responsibility, hope, and fear. We talked for hours that night. About names. About how our lives would change. About whether we were ready. It wasn't perfect happiness. It was real. Heavy. Human. Then things started going wrong. Not suddenly. Slowly. She began to feel physically worse. Pain. Dizziness. Extreme exhaustion. At first, the doctors said it could be normal, but as the weeks passed, her body seemed to weaken instead of adapt. One night she woke up crying. A few hours later, we were in a hospital. That's where we lost the pregnancy. There's no gentle way to say it. It ended. No screaming. No dramatic scenes. Just silence. A silence so heavy it splits you in half. We left the hospital without knowing what to say, without knowing how to look at each other. The weeks that followed were strange and painful. We mourned differently. I tried to stay strong. She withdrew into herself. The relationship began to crack, not because love was gone, but because grief was everywhere. It was during that grief that the truth began to surface. Not all at once. Slowly. Cruelly. Everything started with a conversation with my mother. I mentioned the miscarriage. I mentioned her name. I mentioned her last name. I saw my mother's face change instantly. She didn't shout. She didn't get angry. She didn't try to change the subject. She froze. I asked what was wrong. She told me to sit down. Her hands were shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of something she had carried for decades. Then she said a sentence that drained all the air from my lungs. There are things about your father I never told you. That was the moment I knew my life was about to collapse again. She explained that my father had another relationship before her. That there was a child from that relationship. She never knew exactly what happened. Only that the woman left, and my father chose to disappear from that child's life. When she gave me the date, when she named the city, when she said the last name, my body went cold. It was her. The woman I loved. The woman I almost had a child with. My sister. I don't remember crying right away. I don't remember screaming. I remember feeling empty, like my body shut down to survive the information. I left my mother's house without knowing how. I drove aimlessly for hours. My hands were steady on the steering wheel while my mind completely collapsed. When I finally spoke to her, my voice didn't sound like mine. I asked to meet. I didn't explain why. I just said it was important. We sat across from each other in a public place. I told her everything. Slowly. Carefully. I watched her expression change. Confusion. Disbelief. Fear. And then something else. Recognition. She told me her mother had also hidden things. That her biological father was a name without a face. A silence that never made sense. We decided to confirm it. DNA test. Waiting for the results was torture. Each day felt unreal. Neither of us spoke much. How do you speak when love and horror exist at the same time? When the results arrived, there was no shock. We were siblings. Biologically. That paper destroyed everything. Not just the relationship. Not just the future. But our sense of identity. The worst part wasn't finding out. The worst part was realizing that if the pregnancy hadn't ended, we might have brought a child into the world without knowing the truth. A child exposed to serious genetic risks because of something neither of us chose. That realization crushed us. We talked for days, sometimes for hours, sometimes not at all. We remembered moments that now felt poisoned. Not because they were fake, but because the context had changed forever. The love didn't disappear instantly. That's the hardest part to explain. We still cared about each other, but not in a way that could continue. Not in a way that was safe. Not in a way that was right. Eventually we talked about the future, and the truth was clear. Staying together would mean living in denial, hiding, lying, and worst of all, accepting the possibility of bringing a child into the world with a genetic burden they never chose. We couldn't do that. Not to ourselves. Not to anyone else. So we separated. Quietly. No drama. No final fight. Just two people packing their lives apart, slowly, painfully, responsibly. We never touched again. We never said, "I love you" again. Not because the feeling was gone, but because saying it was no longer fair. With time, we both moved on in different ways. Therapy. Nightmares. Questions that don't have answers. Moments where the memory returns and knocks the air out of your chest. I learned something I never wanted to learn. Love alone is not always enough. Responsibility sometimes means walking away. And protecting a child can mean never letting them exist. Sometimes I think about the child we almost had. With sadness, yes, but also with a strange sense of relief. Relief that no innocent life had to carry the weight of a truth hidden for too long. That relief hurts. But it is honest. I live with that truth now. Not as punishment, but as a scar that reminds me that some decisions define you forever. And now I ask you honestly, what would you have done in that situation?
I bet you can't hit the follow button and the heart before the video ends in 3, 2, 1.